My name is Maya Thornton. I'm 32, and I never thought I'd hear someone in my own family say those words to me with a smile. But that night, as I walked into the rooftop restaurant holding a gift I'd spent days picking out, everything snapped into focus. I barely had time to look around before the laughter hit first, bright, rehearsed, already warmed up without me. Then I saw her hand flick in my direction, casual and dismissive, pointing toward a fold-out chair shoved next to a trash can. The meaning was instant, sharp, deliberate. Sorry, this table's for family only. No explanation, no room to pretend I misunderstood, just a smirk, a gesture, and an entire room pretending it was normal to exile someone who had paid for the entire reservation. I sat down because I didn't know what else to do. For months, I had told myself that if I kept showing up, one day things would change, that people eventually see the person who quietly holds everything together. But as I sat alone with my unopened gift and a glass of water I never asked for, it hit me that this wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. It was a message, one they expected me to swallow without protest. What they didn't expect was what happened when the bill arrived. $3,500. And every eye turned to me. Before I tell you what I said next and what followed after I walked away from that table, tell me this. What time is it where you are, and where are you listening from? I'm curious how far this story will reach. The week moved forward with a kind of slow, grinding momentum that left little room to breathe. I kept telling myself that handling the logistics would calm the tension sitting under my skin. So I opened my laptop and began searching for a venue that matched the level of celebration everyone seemed determined to project. A new rooftop restaurant in downtown Madison had been trending online. The type of place that cared more about ambience than comfort. But it offered a private dining space with full service coordination. That alone made it feel like the safest choice, or at least the most controlled one. Once I called and secured the reservation, the manager walked me through the available menus, floral setups, and layout options. Each suggestion seemed to carry a hidden price tag, yet saying no felt impossible. I could hear the manager typing as I approved details one by one, each item sliding neatly onto the card I had given them. The deposit, non-refundable naturally, was processed with a soft chime from my banking app. It wasn't a small amount, but I had long ago measured generosity by numbers. Responsibility had a way of becoming habitual. When I texted a confirmation screenshot to Gloria Thornton, she responded within seconds, delighted by the aesthetic possibilities. Her messages poured in like rapid-fire directives, fresh lilies instead of roses, real linen napkins, an upgraded dessert display for photo purposes. She spoke in absolutes. This will look better. That's too plain. We should elevate the table decor.
I hardly needed to ask who he referred to. At no point did she mention reimbursement, but after years of similar patterns, the omission no longer surprised me. Douglas Thornton reacted differently. He sent a brief acknowledgement, the kind that avoided emotional commentary, but carried an unmistakable subtext. Good. Handle it. He had perfected the art of stepping aside while still benefiting from every outcome. His silence worked like a gentle nudge, reminding me there would be consequences if anything fell below the family's expectations. The requests escalated as the date approached, a custom welcome sign, specialty mocktails that required a separate fee, an arrangement of candles that needed hazard clearance from the venue. I accepted each new task with a steady voice, even as the tally rose behind it. Logic told me I should draw a line, but something quieter pushed against that instinct. An old belief that fulfilling every demand might earn me a place at the center rather than the edge. Even Chloe Thornton chimed in occasionally, always upbeat, always certain her ideas improved the event. Her tone held the confidence of someone who expected the world to mold itself around her preferences. She sent inspiration photos, color palettes, and captions crafted as if the night were already a social media victory. None of it acknowledged who was facilitating the work. It was simply assumed. I kept receipts in a folder on my desktop, though I couldn't articulate why. Maybe part of me wanted proof that I hadn't imagined the imbalance. Or maybe I just needed something tangible to hold when the emotional cost became harder to quantify. But even that small act felt secretive, as if preparing documentation meant betraying the unspoken agreement that I would carry whatever weight the family handed me. As the final week settled in, I visited the venue in person. The space was airy, framed by tall windows that held a view of the Capitol building. Staff members moved about with curated efficiency, adjusting place settings and polishing stemware. I confirmed arrival times, reviewed the lighting plan, and double-checked the seating layout. It felt strange standing in the room alone, imagining the gathering that would soon fill it. Part of me hoped that a flawless environment might soften whatever harshness lingered between us. The night before the event, I laid out my clothes, wrapped the engagement gift, and reviewed the confirmation email one last time. The total charges listed at the bottom were higher than I expected, though nothing in the breakdown surprised me. Every decision made by someone else had found its way onto my bill. Yet I still told myself that showing up fully, prepared, composed, supportive, might finally shift the dynamic that had shaped so much of my life. I went to bed early, determined to face the next evening with a steady mind. There was no point rehearsing conversations or inventing scenarios where things unfolded differently. All I could do was step into the night exactly as it had been arranged and hope that, for once, effort might be recognized instead of absorbed into oblivion. The next evening moved forward with a kind of strange detachment, as if I were drifting along the version of myself that had carefully curated every detail. I arrived a few minutes early, carrying the wrapped gift that felt meaningful when I picked it out. The host recognized my name on the reservation and guided me toward the private room. The clatter of silverware and the low pulse of background music grew louder as we approached, and a surge of heat climbed my spine. I steadied my breath before stepping inside. The room was already full. Conversations overlapped in a lively hum, shaped by the sort of brightness people adopt when they believe the night belongs to them. At the center stood Chloe Thornton, radiant in a dress chosen for maximum attention. She lifted a champagne flute as someone snapped a photo, her expression fixed in triumph. I waited for her to notice me, but her eyes slid past, like I was an unfamiliar shadow. When she finally paused, a slow smile curved onto her face, one that felt practiced and faintly satisfied. Her hand lifted, almost graceful in its dismissal, directing me toward a narrow space near the back. A fold-out chair sat against a utility wall, angled beside a stainless steel trash can lined with fresh bags. The placement wasn't accidental. It was intentional enough that the meaning stung before I could suppress the reaction.
Each step quiet, my gift resting lightly in my grip. The room didn't fall silent, it simply shifted, the laughter smoothing into something edged with amusement. Sitting on the metal chair, I kept my back straight. A server approached and placed a glass of water on the small ledge beside me. No menu, no offer of anything beyond the bare minimum. I thanked him anyway, adjusting the hem of my dress to steady myself. Across the room, flashes from phone cameras burst around Chloe as she leaned into the attention with unrestrained ease. The table arrangement around her looked exactly like the mood board she had sent earlier, a curated celebration built on decisions she never had to execute. Time passed in uneven stretches. I watched groups merge into conversation clusters, watched plates of appetizers circulate, watched the ease with which everyone took their place. My chair remained anchored in its corner, part of the room, but outside its purpose. I tried not to interpret it as a reflection of my worth, though the symbolism was too stark to ignore. I held the gift on my lap, fingers tracing the ribbon whenever the sting of exclusion sharpened. The hum of approval around Chloe kept rising, carrying her higher while pushing me further toward irrelevance. An hour slipped by, then more. When glasses clinked and a toast began at the main table, I stayed still. No eyes turned my way. No gesture invited me closer. The realization settled with a quiet heaviness. The work I had done, the money I had spent, the arrangements I had handled were invisible the moment they no longer served anyone else. I wasn't part of the celebration. I was part of the infrastructure. Near the end of the evening, a server approached with a leather folio in his hands. His expression held a polite uncertainty, the kind staff adopt when they know a moment might become unpleasant. He paused beside me and lowered his voice to confirm my identity. Inside the folio sat the final total, $3,500. The number didn't surprise me, but the expectation behind it nearly did. Across the room, I felt Chloe watching. Her posture was relaxed, almost indulgent, as if the arrangement had unfolded exactly as she wanted. Conversations quieted enough that the tension sharpened. The server asked if he should process the card that had been used for the reservation. It was a simple question, one he asked with no knowledge of the weight behind it. My answer had already formed. I rose from the chair, smoothing my dress as I stepped forward. The room shifted its attention, subtle but undeniable. I met the server's gaze first, then let my eyes move across the tables until they reached the center, where Chloe sat, her expression caught between pleasure and surprise. The silence felt suspended, waiting. Not my table. The words left my mouth steady and unforced, carrying the truth I had swallowed for far too long. The reaction around me was immediate, a ripple of stunned stillness, yet none of it demanded a response from me. I turned away from the table, leaving the folio exactly where it had been presented. A brief stillness followed as I stepped away from the fold-out chair, and the quiet carried a weight that felt heavier than the words I had spoken. I kept my movements deliberate, not rushed, not hesitant. The room watched with an attention it had never offered earlier, and for once, the gaze didn't make me shrink. The server remained frozen with the leather folio in his hands, uncertain whether to follow me or retreat. I gave him a small nod, not of apology, but acknowledgement. He was simply caught in the crossfire of something he hadn't created. His shoulders softened, as if he understood. It was the first gesture of genuine neutrality I felt all evening. Across the room, Chloe Thornton straightened in her seat. The veneer of effortless composure on her face faltered, pulling tight around her eyes. The symmetry of her confidence wavered as she tried to regain control of the moment. The lighting from the overhead fixtures cast sharp angles across her expression, revealing the tension she usually hides so well. Her hands tightened around her champagne flute, the posture tense enough to strain. Near her, Jason Abbott lowered his glass slowly, his confusion unmasked. His attention moved between the folio, the server, and Chloe, as if trying to reconcile the pieces. He didn't rise, didn't intervene, didn't call my name. The absence of action carried its own clarity. Then Gloria Thornton shifted in her chair. The reaction came not with volume, but with tight displeasure, the kind sharpened by years of believing that any disruption reflected poorly on her. Her lips formed a careful expression meant to soften the edges of the scene, though the strain in her jaw betrayed her panic. She looked toward the guests as if assessing the damage to her curated image. Beside her, Douglas Thornton leaned forward, bracing his elbows on the table in a posture he used whenever tension escalated. His eyes narrowed with the sort of irritation that masked deeper unease.